inspiring speech. I love that. And before we move on to our second speaker, I would like to ask Chloe for the timing rule.
No, that's okay. All the speeches have different times. Milt's was 4 to 6. Here, let me stand up. Jason's is 5 to 7. Paula's is 7 to 9. Green, yellow, red.
I got it. Thank you. So our next speaker is Mr. Jason Griffin, who joined the club August 2011, past VP of membership and current president. His answer to my question is, mine would be keep calm and learn to fly fish, and said this will fit nicely with his planned speech. Please welcome Jason Griffin.
All right, thank you, Miley. As many of you have heard me mention before, one of my favorite hobbies, one of my favorite activities in the world is to go fishing. Some of my earliest and fondest memories in my life revolve around the simple act of a day spent on the water with friends or family. And for as long as I can remember, it's always been something that I've really enjoyed doing. But a couple years ago, something occurred to me about fishing that I hadn't realized before. And that is that fishing isn't just a fun activity, but that it actually builds character. And that in a day of fishing, there's actually a lot of lessons that we can learn about life. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, this guy has just come up with the best excuse. Like, sorry babe, can't go purse shopping with you, gotta go build some character. However, I'm lucky, my girlfriend loves to fish, so you don't have to question my sincerity. Now to drive this point home, I wanted to talk about the first time that I went fishing with my niece, Madison. And this was a couple years ago. She was about 4 years old at the time. And the whole family had planned a vacation to northern Minnesota, a resort called Brookside near the town of Park Rapids. We were all very, very excited about this trip. Madison, on the other hand, was exceptionally excited. And one of the things that she was looking forward to above everything else on this trip was fishing with her uncles. So we all traveled from our separate corners of the country, and we met in Minneapolis. And then we took the 4.5 hour drive from Minneapolis up to Park Rapids. And when we finally arrived at Brookside, the first thing naturally that we had to do is unload the cars, get all the luggage inside, put all the groceries away, and just generally get settled in. No fewer than about 2 minutes later, Madison has her fishing rod in hand, and she's ready to go. And I explained to her that, Madison, there's several things that we have to do before we can go fishing. She reluctantly agrees, but she looks like she's about to burst at the seams. And I think to myself that we haven't even started fishing, and she's already learned her first lesson of the day, and that is the power of anticipation. Life's just more fun when we have something to look forward to. So we got everything put away and got settled in, and I went down to the lodge to grab some bait. I came back, grabbed Madison, rod in one hand, bait and tackle in the other, and we went down to the dock to start fishing. And everyone else followed close behind to just hang out and watch. So we got down to the dock, and the first thing that I needed to do was get Madison set up. So she watched as I tied a hook onto her line, and I pinched a couple of weights on there, and the next thing I had to do was bait the hook. So we were fishing with night crawlers that day, and if you're not familiar with night crawlers, they're worms. And they come in a styrofoam case about this big, and it's full of soil and a bit of water to keep them fresh. And taking one of these worms out of the container and putting it on a hook is admittedly not the most visually appealing process. So I pull this worm out, and I pinch the tail off, and I thread the hook through it a few times, and I look over at Madison, and she's watching with curiosity and a little bit of disgust. And now she's learned her second lesson of the day, that sometimes in life, when we want good things, we have to get our hands dirty. If I want to catch a fish, I have to bait the hook. Madison, on the other hand, has her uncles to do that for her. So now the hook's baited, and it's finally time. So we walk carefully to the end of the dock. I ask her if she's ready. She eagerly says yes. So I help her cast some line out into the water, and I close the bail, and I hand her the rod, and we watch as that hook slowly sinks and suspends in the water in front of us. And it couldn't have been there more than 3 seconds before a fish swam out of nowhere and inhaled that bait. And we all started hollering, and Madison somehow instinctively knew to set that hook and reel in the line, and just like that, within a matter of seconds, Madison had caught her first fish. And she learned her next lesson of the day, which is that beginner's luck does actually exist. And also that there's a reward at the end. Now I know you're thinking she didn't have to wait long for this fish, it happened in seconds, but I'm speaking more of all the anticipation that had built up and the whole process to get us to that point, and she had caught her first fish. So I remove the hook from this fish's mouth and I hold it down low so that she can look at it, and she's wide-eyed and just staring at this fish, and she's so proud and she wants to touch it, and to her it just represents this monumental achievement, and I'm looking at it going, this thing will make perfect bait. And that brings us to our next lesson of the day, which is the power of perspective. Two people can look at the same thing and see something totally different. And she could not have cared less that this fish was all of about 2.5 inches long. To her, it might as well have been a trophy. And she was so proud, and I was so happy to share that moment with her. So I threw the fish back in the water, I gave him a pardon, and he swam off. And we put some more bait on the hook, and we cast that line back out there. And this time we had a bobber on it. So we threw a little bit more line out there, and we watched on the water as that bobber bounced up and down. And I told her, Madison, if you see that bobber go underwater, I need you to set the hook, just like you did last time. So we watch, and we watch, and she waits about 15 seconds before she looks up at me with the rod in one hand, puzzled, and says, what's taking so long? And so she's learned her next lesson of the day, and that is, patience is a virtue, and it's not one that many 4-year-olds possess. So I explained to her that you just have to wait. It doesn't always happen as quick as it did the first time. And we spend the next 25, 30 minutes hanging out on the dock, the whole family together, fishing. Get a few more bites. Don't succeed in getting any more fish in, for Madison at least. And now it's getting late. The mosquitoes of northern Minnesota are starting to come out, and Madison's starting to lose interest anyways, so we decide that we're going to just go ahead and pack up and head in, and we'll come back out and get them tomorrow. But as I reflected on this trip, what struck me about it is the sheer number of lessons. If you look closely at just that 30 minutes of fishing, and all that you can take away from that, and all of the life lessons that she can learn from that. And what struck me even more was how lucky I felt to have shared in that moment with her, and to be there when she caught her first fish, and I don't think she'll ever forget it, and I know that I won't ever forget it. So I felt really, truly blessed to be a part of that. And that brings me to probably the biggest lesson that I've learned from reflecting on this incident, and that is that fishing is not just a fun activity for me. Fishing brings family together, and it creates memories that last a lifetime. Thank you.
Alright, our last speaker for the night is Miss Paula Schwartz. She joined the club October